Welcome to the Can't Stop the Growth podcast, the home service podcast dedicated to personal and leadership development. I'm your host, Chad Peterman, and if you're ready to grow as a leader, you've come to the right place. Let's jump in. What I'm going to change the title to is the 5 barriers to change. So, as we think about change, ultimately, our goal every day, while oftentimes met with a negative, the goal is to change. That is the goal every single day, whether you like it or not. And some will say, "Oh, I'm not real good with change." Well, you change every single day. That is the point. You may not categorize it as that. You may set out to do something different, but essentially that thing that is different is, in fact, change. And what we see as we either embrace change or look to repel change is we find these 5 common barriers. And those 5 barriers that we're going to talk about today are 1, embrace barriers, identify barriers, remove barriers, don't be the barrier, and run through barriers. So again, the 5 we're going to talk about today: embrace barriers, identify barriers, remove, don't be, and run through. So we're going to start with embrace. So what does it mean to embrace barriers? I would imagine that all of us have gone through tough times in our lives, whether that be personal, whether that be professional, whatever it may be. And undoubtedly, those tough times, as we look back on them, are characterized by barriers, ones that we had to overcome, ones that we thought were, insurmountable at the time. We weren't sure, we didn't have a plan, whatever it may be. But ultimately, it was our willingness to embrace those barriers that led us to where we are today. And what I oftentimes think about when it comes to embracing barriers, embracing change, while it be hard, the most important thing we can do on our end to make embracing barriers easy, to make change come more freely, is to paint that picture of where it is that we want to go. We've talked about painting pictures. I should be an artist by now, but I have zero artistic creativity, nothing in my body. However, the one thing that I have learned to paint is wherever it is that I want to go. Think about that. Wouldn't that make change a whole lot easier if we knew that we were changing because of where we wanted to go? Because of that place out there in the future that we knew we couldn't get to today. We were going to have to get better. We were going to have to do more. We're going to have to do something a little bit different. Those barriers that we see are simply modifications that we need to make along the way. Can some of them be scary? Absolutely. Can some of them seem like, I don't know how you're ever going to do that? 100%. But it is that picture of where you want to be, whether that be personal or professional, that picture that will help you embrace those barriers. Knowing that anything worthwhile, any goal worth chasing, is going to come with its fair share of turbulent times. When it comes to embracing barriers, the one quality that I have seen out of our team, which I feel like leads us down paths to what it is that we get to do and some of the fantastic things that we do today, is really that positive outlook. Who's ever presented an idea to, a manager or a group of peers, and you were immediately met with, "Well, that won't work." Oh, really? You've tried this, huh? Now, sometimes that is the case, right? That is, hey, we tried that. I've been there. We've done this now for quite a few years. There are things that we have tried and they didn't work. Now, that's not to say that we couldn't look at it a little bit differently. We couldn't do something just a little bit differently. But if you are that person in the group that is always meeting every slight modification with "that won't work," you're going to be hard-pressed to find people to follow you. Why can't it work? And usually, those people will rattle off a number of things that in their mind are barriers to this change. Rather than embracing these barriers, rather than responding with, well, yeah, I think we could do that. Even with, yeah, well, we should be able to do that. One thing we may want to think about is this, just from my perspective. Oh, yeah, that's a great thought. When it comes to embracing barriers, think collaboration. Because there are a bunch of different perspectives. One of the things that we have learned here is that when making a change, when embracing barriers, it's important to get all perspectives. Right? There's a lot of moving parts here. So one change over here, yeah, it could result in something that won't work over here. And that's fine. We're going to run into those things all the time. However, even if you're the area that it won't work, what if you responded by embracing that barrier? What would that sound like? Well, yeah, we could do that. However, one of the things that may present a problem is this. When it comes to us, that won't work. Okay, cool. Well, we can work around that. That's the collaboration. That's how change happens. When we embrace these barriers, we allow change to happen. Whereas when we don't embrace them, when we think nothing is going to run smoothly until we embrace the barriers that are in our way. How do we do that? How do we embrace barriers as leaders in our personal lives? Again, we have to understand where it is that we're going. We have to understand that this also has to be communicated to our team. I've talked about it a number of times before we started the document that has become our vivid vision. There was this grand picture in my head of where we were going to go. But it wasn't until we told people, it wasn't until we explained to them where it was that we thought we could go, that we got people excited. And a lot of times as a leader, that excitement, that starts with your willingness to embrace barriers. To embrace the fact that this is not going to be easy. If it were, everyone would do it. We're going to do something different. And we're going to run into challenges. Because in order to do something different, you're going to run into problems that you've never ran into before. And that's okay. Next up is identifying barriers. So we embrace them, we understand that they're going to be there. We're willing to run up against them. But then it's important to identify them. Most important, as a leader, we must identify those barriers that are internal for those that we lead. Trust me, not everybody has had the privilege of being in an environment where embracing barriers, where accepting change, where that comes natural. Think about all the things in your life, all of the situations, all of the circumstances, how you were raised, what your parents thought about change, all of these things. Think about how those affect you today. Think about all the influences that you've had in your life, both positive and negative. Those people that told you you couldn't do something, or that was impossible, or, well, I wouldn't try that, you may get hurt. Think about all those things. Think about that as a parent. Am I creating internal barriers for my kids? Am I, because of how I view change, am I somehow creating an environment where they will struggle with change? That's when it really lands, doesn't it? Well, I don't want to do that. Well, then you're going to have to embrace some change. Think about how fast the world is changing. Think about all the things that 3 years ago weren't here. I always think about GPS. Like, Google Maps may be the greatest thing that ever existed. Like, right now, for me, that is like it. Like, with all the construction and all of that, and the fact that it can literally know that that's happening in real time and direct me in the right direction. I mean, I remember, remember the Garmin? That thing sucked. You had to, if you didn't update that thing, you were off on some other road. But it was cool at the time, right? Got you to where you needed to go. But think about how fast that changes. You know, we talk about identifying barriers. Think about generational barriers. Think about those that, what is the common one now? I think I'm getting old, but, all of the generations, I think there's like 2 or 3 after me now. But, what was the big thing with millennials? Like, they're lazy. They don't want to do this. They don't want to, do anything. All these things about this generation. Well, when it comes to leadership, we have to understand where people are. So many times as leaders, we want people to do things exactly as we do them. Guess what? They're not going to. So as leaders, it's our responsibility to identify where we want to go may differ how we get there from those that we lead. And they may have some good ideas on how to get there. What I can tell you about leadership is if you spend most of your time complaining about the barriers that exist within your team, about why this person can't figure this out, and I don't understand why they can't do this, you're going to spend a lot of time frustrated. Where we have the responsibility as leaders is we have the responsibility to listen. We have the responsibility to ask great questions, to identify what's holding this person back. Maybe it's a bad influence that they had growing up, and that's really holding them back and preventing them from, displaying the confidence that they need to be really successful. You see it in them, but they have this internal barrier that they just can't jump over. Well, it's your job to inspire them to jump over that internal barrier. Sometimes they can't even see it, right? Sometimes we can't even see it. Like, why do I do things like that all the time? Oh, now that I think about it, it may be because this. And that's preventing you from moving forward. What are those things? If you're leading a team right now, think about those that you lead. What are those internal barriers that people on your team have that are preventing them from moving forward? Some of you may be saying, I'm not sure. Guess what? That's okay. But it's time to find out. Because when you find out, when someone that you are leading understands that you care about their internal barriers, they will most definitely run through barriers for you. Because that's what leadership's about, right? It's about offering someone a helping hand. Whether that's over an internal barrier or something external that they're just struggling with. That's what leadership is about. But we're often reluctant to identify these internal barriers that sometimes hold us back more than even external. And I'm not saying dive into someone's personal life, but there again, letting them know that you care, letting them know that, hey, I really see some potential in you, but something seems to be holding you back. Oftentimes they either know or they'll figure it out once they know that you care. Because they know that you want them to succeed. Sometimes it's just confidence. That's the biggest barrier. God, they could be really good. They just seem to lack the confidence. Well, what are you going to do to inspire that confidence? Because they're probably not going to get to the level that you want them to get to, that you know that they can get to, until you both, through great communication, through listening, through asking great questions, until they know that you truly care about that. And I'm not saying that if you don't know, you don't care. What I'm saying is you have to show that you care. You have to let that other person know that, hey, I see these obstacles, but we're going to get through them. You know, sometimes we'll hear people talk about those that they lead as, well, they think getting it. My question often is, well, have you talked to them about it? Well, no. What? I mean, they're obviously not getting it for a reason. Maybe a conversation may help the situation. Like, hey, I noticed that this is happening a lot. What can I do to help? What can I do to support you so that that doesn't happen? Because I'm pretty sure you don't want that to happen. Oftentimes, what's the response? Yeah, I don't want that to happen. I just can't seem to get over this hurdle. Okay, well, let's think of another way. Let's, do something different. Let's, what can I do to help you so that you don't continue to do that? Because I think we both agree that ain't good. Yeah, I understand. It's when we don't have that conversation, when we are reluctant to identify that barrier with that person, that it keeps going on, that is not going to stop. Yeah, are those conversations fun all the time? No, they're not. But that's what you signed up to do. You signed up to have the tough conversations. Because at the end of the day, that tough conversation is hopefully going to help somebody. It's hopefully going to move your team forward. On a very low level, it's just going to help that person maybe just in their life. Maybe they've been struggling with that for a long time. And they've bounced around from job to job, all because of the same problem. only to find out that no one ever asked him about it. They just said, well, he doesn't get it. See ya. Well, he's never going to figure it out. Think about that person on your team right now that just doesn't get it. What would it look like if you sat down with that person today? Hell, not even sat down. Hell, just sent them a text message and said, hey, man, just want to make sure you're okay. Just checking in on you. I noticed you've been struggling out there, and I just want to offer a hand. If you want to help or sit down Monday morning and figure something out, just want to let you know I'm here for you. Just want to let you know we're in this together. So whatever you're struggling with, I'm struggling with it too. Because I don't want to see you struggle. Identify those barriers. Next up is remove barriers. So this is the fun part. This is what happens after you send that text message, after you have that sit down with somebody who's maybe struggling. Then you, as the leader, you get to start removing barriers. This is where we get a little bit of that like endorphin, right? Like, ooh, I can make a difference. This is what I signed up for. Yeah, that tough conversation sucked really bad, but I kind of like this. You know, looked at as the hero of the situation. This is kind of nice. You know, I think I've told this story before, but unfortunately, what was it, last year? Time flies. I think it was last year, sometime. Our plumbing department had the privilege of me being the manager. Scary. But what I told our amazing team was that I know nothing about plumbing. Hell, I just found out the other day that I had to refill my water softener. It doesn't refill itself. Did you guys know that? I don't know what kind of one they sold me, but apparently you got to put salt in the damn thing. I said, Dan, didn't you get one that doesn't have a tank or something? He's like, I'm pretty sure there's a tank there, buddy. I'll go check that out tonight, see what I can find. Apparently there was one. So, yeah, good for me. Leading the charge here, huh? But I told them, like, hey, man, I don't know anything about this stuff. But what I do know is that I know some people around here, and whatever problems you have, I will get them fixed. So who's got a problem? Everybody just kind of looked at me for a minute, and I go, no, seriously, who has a problem? Like something that sucked yesterday. What sucked about yesterday? I think I finally got someone to raise their hand. I said, okay, perfect, we can fix that. What do you mean? Well, we can fix it. That seems simple. I can do that. I like simple. Anybody else got anything? You tell me what didn't go well yesterday, and we'll find a solution for it. Now, I may not be able to solve everything. I can't solve the fact that most of their plumbing's in their crawl space. I get it. Can't fix that. Look a little weird if the plumbing was above the floor. So we'll keep it down there. But we can solve just about everything. Some of them, yes, will take time. And oftentimes, that's where we get the reluctance to, at first, even embrace the barriers. Is because we've done this whole thing where we've embraced, we've identified, and then it came time to remove it, and by God, that didn't work right away. Well, what the hell? That guy's full of crap. Got to this whole remove part, I removed it, but it didn't fix it. Yeah. Because as we said, anything worthwhile is going to take a little bit of time. It's not going to happen overnight. That text message that you send today and that person you sit down with Monday probably isn't going to be the rock star on Monday afternoon. But guess what? You're going to stick with them because it takes time. That change that they're looking to make is just as hard as the one you had to make. They may have been doing it for years, hell, decades, not even knowing it. not even knowing that something was holding them back. As leaders, we're called not to tell people what to do, not to point our finger and tell them what they're doing wrong. It's to remove barriers. You know, one of the most fun things that we do that I love is the survey that we do every quarter. So we just got the results back, I think yesterday, maybe the day before. And what I have always told people leading teams is don't make this so difficult on yourself. They're like, oh God, I got low marks in this, and I don't know what I'm going to do over here. I'm a terrible person. I'm a terrible manager. I'm like, calm down first. Calm down. 2, do you know how to fix all that? Well, no, I thought I've been doing a good job. Well, why not? Sounds like you got quite a few barriers there based on the feedback that your team's given you. What I would do, again, super simple, why don't you bring those results up in your next meeting and say, hey guys, hey gals, how are we going to fix this? Oftentimes, if you empower your team, they'll remove the barrier. Because a number of barriers are caused from just a lack of perspective. We see that all the time. We got a bunch of people running around in trucks by themselves, and then we got people creating policy sitting at their desk. Well, guess what they don't have the perspective of? What's actually going on? Well, when you start to ask people, what in the hell's going on? Well, this sucks. Okay, well, tell me a little bit more about it. And hopefully we can make it suck less. Because that's the last thing that we ever want to do is make something terrible. Well, then you start to talk about it. Well, hey, it says that, everyone's at capacity. Well, tell me a little bit about how we can reduce that. What's that look like? Well, what if we did this? Sure, sounds like a great plan. Let's do that. Empower your team to solve the problems. You don't have to have all the answers. They'll remove most of the barriers for you. There's a few that, I got to go talk to somebody. And, if you went up to them and said that, they'd kind of look at you like you had 4 heads. But I can go make that conversation happen. I can go make that change really quickly for you. But there's a lot of low-hanging fruit that people view as barriers because they run up against it every single day that they'll remove for themselves. I mean, don't make it harder than it has to be. Again, leadership should be simple. Just empower your team. You guys can do it all together. Pretty simple. But know that they'll take time. There's low-hanging fruit, but then there's bigger ones, right? There's bigger problems. And next, as we begin to remove these barriers, oftentimes what I see is we start to gain some momentum removing barriers, and then we become the barrier. We become the impediment that gets in everybody's way. And what do I mean by that? What I mean by that is oftentimes what is best for you personally or what you view as best for you may not be what's best for the team. What do I mean by that? Well, here's a prime example. So oftentimes, I'll have conversations with people and they're like, well, what's your day look like? What do you do on a daily basis? It's like, well, I appreciate you asking that. I assume that you're coming from a perspective of I don't do anything. No, not at all. Not at all. Okay, perfect. Just so we're clear. But what I always joke is, as we grow, as we empower people, as we bring great people onto our team, and the people that have been on our team continue just to get better and better and better, I go, they don't let me do a lot of things. Because they're a hell of a lot better at it than me. So I just let them do it. I'm here to support. I'm here to remove roadblocks if they got one. But other than that, hey man, go for it. You want to be in this meeting? I don't know. I figure you guys got it taken care of. Okay, we just thought we'd ask. All right, sounds good. Let me know how it goes. Let me know if you need anything. Some of you that are leading teams probably noticed that, right? There was a time when you had to jump in and be the hero in every situation. But ultimately, leadership is about making the people on your team the hero. It's about empowering them. It's about removing those roadblocks, identifying them, embracing them, and then getting the hell out of the way to let people be great. Because a lot of people have it in them. It's just oftentimes people stand in their way. This is the real fun part. Removing roadblocks, that's fun. It really is. But you'll reach a level with people. Once you sit down with them, you're helping them remove their internal roadblocks. You're moving out the things that they may not be able to move out for themselves. And then you get to watch them be great. You get to create the place, the department, where they do things that they never thought possible. What does that look like? Think about that for a second. What would your department look like if everyone had the opportunity to be great? And if they don't have the opportunity to be great, if we think that they just don't get it, whose responsibility is that? A lot of people would say it's theirs. Well, unfortunately, here at this company, the leader signed up to create a place where everyone on their team can be great. Some, that's going to take a little bit more heavy lifting than others. And guess what? That's okay. Paint that picture of what if that person was great? What would they need from me? As I've often said, no one came in today to do a crappy job. At least I hope they didn't. If you identify that they did, please remove them promptly from the team. But I think we got a team here that no one's coming in to say, watch me screw this one up today. No. Yeah, they may not know what to do. They may be struggling. But goddamn, wrap your arm around them and say, hey, I'm here to help. What do you need from me? What's going on? Oh, I'm good. No, you're not. No, you're not. What is it? Let's get down to it. It's Friday, and by God, by the end of the day, you're going to be a little bit better than you were coming in here today. That's all we need, just a little bit of improvement. Last is run through barriers. Run through them. By God, don't be that person that literally will think up every possible situation as to why something cannot be done. What I will respond with every time is, yes, it can. We may just be looking at it from the wrong perspective. Because guess what? Someone out there is probably doing it. Like, you're going to have to know it at 80% good and just go for it. Knowing that, yeah, we're going to run into barriers as we go off on this new path or make this change. We're going to break something. If you don't break something, my bet, I put a lot of money on you never got started in the first place. That's why you didn't break anything. You've talked about it. You've sat around and had meeting after meeting after meeting after meeting. Like, let's go. We got a pretty damn good idea about what's going to happen. Like, let's move. Because what I know is sitting here, we ain't going anywhere special. That's not to say that the details aren't important. They are. Yes, we need to cross our T's, dot our I's, make sure that we're all good. But at the end of the day, we don't know how to spell the damn word. So there's probably a T or an I somewhere where we never even thought there would be. I'm a terrible speller. Still gives me the heebie-jeebies thinking about those spelling bees that they used to make us go through. God, why would you submit a kid to that? I'm going to stand up in front of everybody and spell a word. It's a struggle my wife and I are going through right now. So my daughter doesn't understand. She'll spell stuff out, and I'm like, I got nothing. What are you talking about here? Can you write it down? You're spelling it out, but I can't. My mind don't work like that. I can't see that word that you're trying to spell to me. And undoubtedly, I'll just say it thinking, and she's like, why did you say that in front of her? I was like, because I can't spell it to you. Sorry. I don't know. Maybe I'll text it to you next time. I get it. But you're not going to have all the answers. If you wait around for all the answers, you're going to be waiting for a very, very long time. And undoubtedly, that is probably what people on your team are struggling with the most. They're uncertain of change. They're uncertain about what they're doing currently, and that makes them even more uncertain about doing something different. Think about that for a second. If someone on your team is struggling, do you think they know? Probably got a pretty good idea. We got a lot of data around here that pretty much tells you doing good or you struggling. Well, so if someone on your team is struggling, what do you think the chances of them just going, you know what, I think I'm going to try something new that I've never done before? What they're doing now isn't working. Their confidence level is in the dumps. That's where you've got to help. Hey, let's try this. Let's try this new way today. I'm behind you. I've seen a couple other people doing this. Seems to be working for them. Hell, I don't know if it'll work for you, but let's give it a whirl, man. I'm right behind you. Go to your first call, try it out. It's going to feel really uncomfortable. You're probably going to sound like a robot. You're probably going to be a little bit wonky, but guess what? It's got to be better than what you're doing now. And if it isn't, we'll try something different on the second call. But we're going to figure it out. We'll figure out something that works for you. Let's move. That's leadership. Taking somebody by the hand and saying, hey, we're going to figure this out. Rather than, he just doesn't get it. He just ain't going to figure it out. Well, yeah, and what you're going to do is never figure it out either. Because your team ultimately has to do the work. So if you're reluctant to help them, if you're reluctant to help them identify those barriers, if you're reluctant to help them remove them, guess what? You're going to have a lot of barriers in your path to success as well. It's those who reach out freely, those who aren't scared to sit down and have that conversation, those that aren't afraid to go in at it and just let her rip. I actually told somebody that one time. They go, what's your philosophy in business? I said, just fucking go for it. They're like, is that a really good philosophy? I was like, well, I mean, we got a lot of smart people, but at the end of the day, we got to go for it. We got to move. He came on board, the guy that I told that to, so I guess he bought it. He liked it, right? Chris is probably like, I was a little bit worried at that moment, but Guys, this should be super fun. Literally. Like, there's tough conversations. There's tough days. There's things that suck. There's bad things that happen. But at the end of the day, your ability to lead is based on your ability to want to help somebody. Because that's essentially all we got. You can only do so much stuff on your own until you need the help of others. You can only do so many tasks before you have to have the faith that someone else can do it as well. And they know that you'll be there to support them. It's hard. It's hard taking your hands off the wheel and letting somebody else drive. I know that because my wife is a horrendous driver. It's hard. Learn to close your eyes. Make sure your seatbelt's on tight. That's what it's about. And what you will find is that sometimes you can be the biggest barrier. The way to avoid that is reaching out and helping someone remove theirs. Because in that, what you will see is that your biggest fear, your biggest struggle is trusting others. And the one thing I know is if you're going to create trust, if all of you are going to trust me, then I got to trust you too. It's not a one-way street. A lack of trust is oftentimes the creator of the biggest barriers. So break down those barriers today. Find someone on your team who is struggling. Don't stop asking them until they tell you what their barrier is. What are they struggling with? What are they having a tough time with? And how can you help them? What I know is you will make an impact on that person. You may not make an impact. Some of you have really big teams. You're probably not going to make an impact on everybody today. But if it's just one, that'll start to build momentum. You'll start to see that ball start rolling down the hill. And then you make a commitment on Monday to reach out to somebody else and find out how I can help you. What are you struggling with? Where can I help? It's as simple as how can I make your day suck less today? What would really help if you could do this or if it didn't have to do this? All right, buddy, well, you're going to have to do that, but what I can do is I can help maybe make that a little bit easier. Again, this should be fun. If it's not fun, you need to remove these barriers. Embrace them, identify them, remove them, make sure you're not one, and then run through them. We get to do that every single day. We have the opportunity to make that happen. It's in your hands. If you want to be a great leader, if you want to inspire change in others, it starts with you. Thank you so much for listening. If you enjoyed what you heard, I would greatly appreciate if you would rate the show or share it with someone who might enjoy it. As the name suggests, we are always looking to grow, so let me know in the comments what you thought and if there is anything you would like to hear on future episodes. Come back again soon, and always keep growing out there.